All right. Hey.
Welcome.
People, hello. San Francisco.
Hey, hey, hey. What's up? What's up? What's up?
Nice.
What's up?
So, you guys excited?
Are you excited? Are you excited?
I'm excited.
I'm more excited than that.
Huh?
I'm more excited than that.
Yeah,
Can you be a
people, we
little
need
louder?
to hear you. Come on, there's a ton of you here. Give us some noise. Good. Yeah. That's what we wanted to hear.
So why are you excited?
Oh, I'm excited because this is a massive group of amazing people coming together to build cool things. Why are you excited?
I'm excited because this is the biggest Ethereum hackathon of all time.
Yeah.
This is us.
We're waiting for, oh yeah, this is us. All right, who are we? I think we should probably tell you. My name is Anna. I am the co-host of a podcast called Zero Knowledge Podcast with Frederick Harrison from Parity. We talk about tech things, decentralized things, zero knowledge proofs. If you don't know it, please subscribe. Zero Knowledge Podcast. Evan, what's your deal?
I'm Evan Van Ness. I have a newsletter called Week in Ethereum. Does anybody subscribe? Raise your hand. Humor me. Somebody subscribes here?
Yeah,
Mostly
let's
people
see.
in the front.
Show of hands.
If you don't subscribe, weekinathereum.com. Do that now, please. I am with Consensus, and I work on grants for the foundation.
So what are we up to? What are we doing here?
So as hosts, we are going to make the trains run on time.
We're going to entertain, give you some info.
And tell as many BitConnect jokes as possible.
Please bear with us. All right. This is an ETHGlobal event. So ETHGlobal is a nonprofit educational event series. And there have actually been 4 ETHGlobal events so far just this year. It all started in Waterloo. And yeah, we're going to tell you a little bit about that. But first, I'm actually curious, who hasn't been to an ETHGlobal event? Make some noise, put up your hands. Okay, you guys are newbies. Cool, nice. I'm so happy you're here. But let's talk a little bit about what actually did go down. So, beginning of the year, it started in Denver with ETH Denver. Is there anyone here who went to ETH Denver? Whoa, yeah. Okay, sweet. Oh, wait, you went to ETH Denver.
I was there, yeah. I was a little sick, but there was a great buzz, great energy, and I don't think it was because it was in Colorado. There was a lot of, somebody laughed, thank you.
One person got that.
Nice. That's fine. There was a lot of energy, some great projects formed, hacked together, and actually went on to raise money and do it full time and are shipping code.
Cool. Next up was ETH Buenos Aires. Now, that was pretty far away, but I'm curious, was anyone at ETH Buenos Aires? Yeah, I was there too. I actually went pretty last minute. It was such a beautiful event. There was a garden, people were hacking. It was like super good. And there was again some projects that came out of there that went on to raise funding, and actually they're fully formed projects at this point. So that was pretty excited to see.
Yeah, and I've spent a few years in Buenos Aires, so I would say that Argentines naturally that are in the space get the values of, because of their history, decentralization, of privacy, and of censorship resistance. It was fantastic.
After that, ETHGlobal went to ETH India. So who is at ETH India? Yeah, nice. Tell us something about ETH India.
One of the goals is to build things. Another goal is to introduce more developers into the ecosystem and get them used to the paradigm of security first in developing on a blockchain. And I would say that there were a lot of really talented developers that were there that were learning and developed in Solidity and had a lot of ambitious projects that they built in the hackathon. So it's definitely a big success on that run.
And rounding off the world tour up to then was my hometown, my adopted hometown, Berlin, ETH Berlin. Who's there? That was a big one. Make some noise. I actually want to hear that. Yeah. So what do you remember in that haze that was ETH Berlin?
For me, it was mainly chugging Club Mate.
Nice.
A lot of that.
I heard there was a ball pit.
Yes, I almost fell asleep a couple times in the ball pit.
Yeah.
Despite the Club Mate.
So one of the things that I think really came out of ETH Berlin is you saw these projects that were building kind of core infrastructure stuff. And I think that is something we can actually take into this event. You know, build fun projects, build cool things, but you can also build some of the most important things that will be used later. Nice.
So EthGlobal 2018, by the numbers, 375 projects shipped to DevPost during hackathons, 2,500 plus attendees from 100.
From over 40 countries.
Or over 40 countries.
Yeah.
And so what makes an EthGlobal event EthGlobal? What makes it different from other hackathons that you might have been to? What is the ethos? Let's say it starts with building what you want, and there are talks to inspire you and to, you know, help you decide what you want to build, but you can build whatever you want to, and that moment of serendipity strikes, you can go with it. It's all about building, so showing is more important than telling, especially, you know, when you're presenting to judges. It's really about the building, and in that spirit, it's about learning, about mentoring, about being mentored and growing and forming relationships with people so that you can not only learn and grow right now, but in the future after the hackathon as well.
Yeah, and take advantage of that. Like there's some projects, some really good projects here. There are mentors walking around, talk to them, get them involved in your project early. So this is a hackathon, it's not a conference. You might be used to just sitting back and watching people. Now it's your time to actually get involved, participate, ask questions, start doing stuff. And this is all in sort of in the mindset of like helping build this ecosystem and pushing this entire idea forward. So just keep that one in mind. So.
Hacking in the belly of the beast.
This is it, people.
ETH San Francisco. The largest Ethereum hackathon in the world. Not too bad.
Give us some energy for that. This is really amazing, this crowd. Nice. There's like 1,000 of you.
25% students, 100 institutions.
AKA schools.
16 to 60 plus is the age range.
16 to 60 plus. I think we may be skewing that up a little bit, but nice. All right. Over 30, I think that for like, so there's people from over 30 countries at this event alone. So that's kind of exciting. If you look at the map, you want to go to the next one? EthGlobal events. This is what has already been covered by EthGlobal events in terms of attendees coming from different countries. It's pretty impressive.
There's a lot of the map is covered in blue.
Except that there's also something missing.
There's some areas of white. So
there's like an entire continent missing, I think, there. Anyway, this this basically should inspire you. We're not there yet. It's done really amazing so far, but this whole hackathon is about pushing it forward, get more people involved, spread this message a little bit further.
2019 global domination.
Give us a small hand for that. World domination, people. Nice. So we did just say this was all about hacking, hackathons, but we do want to keep a conversation going with people who are kind of talking about big ideas, important ideas. So we'd like to invite a few speakers onto the stage.
So our moderator will be Kartik Talwar from EthGlobal and SV Angel, and deserves a big round of applause for all the work that he's done. If you see him,
way to go, man.
If you see him, say thank you, and everybody else at EthGlobal as well. We have Balaji Srinivasan, the CTO of Coinbase, x21.co and earn.com as well, among many others, and Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Bitcoin Magazine. Welcome.
Thank you.
Test. Okay. So before we start, I'd like to just clarify that I'm not the only one that made this event happen. There's about 100 people, from volunteers to organizers to everybody who supported us. So I think they should get a bigger round of applause than just ETHGlobal. So we're gonna cover a lot of stuff here, everything from kind of high-level thoughts into this ecosystem to going granular into the tech. But let's just start off with something simple. I know you guys have a really good history of meeting a few years ago. Balaji, why don't you tell us about how you met Vitalik initially?
Yeah, sure. So the first time I met Vitalik was actually in late 2013 when I was at Andreessen Horowitz. And at that time, Blockstream, or the ancestors of Blockstream and the ancestors of Ethereum, were actually all co-founders of the same gigantic startup. Most people don't know that Blockstream and Ethereum were once on the same side. And there was just a huge conference room with a bunch of people there, and I said, who are the founders? And everybody raised their hand at the same time. And I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So that's how I met Vitalik.
Awesome. So we're also going to do a Q&A at the end. And if you have any questions for Vitalik or Balaji, please tweet us at ETH San Francisco or use the hashtag ETH San Francisco, and we'll kind of moderate and get the questions up at the end. So Vitalik, your title is Chief Scientist of the Ethereum Foundation, or the Ethereum Project, and Balaji, you are the CTO of Coinbase. What is it that you actually do at these organizations? What does kind of your day-to-day look like? What are some of your responsibilities or projects you're involved with? Kind of give us an overview of what you do.
Number one, fundamental research on things like proof of stake, sharding, plasma, protocol economics. Number two, helping to kind of go a little further down the pipeline and actually write down the spec. Very often write proof of concept code for kind of testing and proving and simulating different kinds of ideas, or at least writing what would eventually end up kind of becoming the first version of certain pieces of code. Coordinating with and talking to other researchers, kind of participating in the discussion around the Ethereum Foundation and Foundation's overall strategy. Fighting with Bitcoin maximalist trolls on Twitter. Yeah, probably the big ones.
Yeah, so I joined in May, and typically what I do is one part technology, one part management, and I'm trying to, we're driving Coinbase towards a multi-asset or many-asset and many new crypto technology future. And so I'm doing a lot of that. You'll see a bunch of that manifesting on Coinbase, this quarter and in the quarters to come. And a typical day is basically like, can be writing API specs. It can be managing folks. It could be working through all the various legal details to get something new launched.
Great. Kind of taking a step back, how did you initially get involved into the space, and sort of what motivates you and why?
So I first joined the space back in 2011, and I heard about it from my dad, and I actually ignored it because I thought, wait, how can kind of pure bits on a computer that are not backed by anything have value? Then I heard about it again from the internet, and I thought, okay, this might be something that's kind of worth looking into. And I popped into the Bitcoin forums. Then comes the story that I already told in many cases many times about starting to write for Bitcoin Weekly, then moving over to Bitcoin Magazine. What interested me about Bitcoin was that it was really a kind of combination of different things that all interested me individually put together. So I was already doing a lot of math and computer science. I was already interested in kind of economic and political topics. I was already kind of interested in open source software and Bitcoin. And at the time, it really was just Bitcoin, kind of was all of these things put together. And it seemed like an idea that was kind of at least interesting enough to kind of be an idea and a community that was interesting enough to at least be worth trying to sink into.
Yeah, so I first heard about Bitcoin, I think in either 2010 or early 2011, and was following it through the initial bubble and whatnot. And what gave me a lot of faith in it was the technology was awesome, but it was the recovery after that first bubble crash and then comeback over 2012 that made me think, okay, this might have legs not just as a technology but as a market phenomenon. And got very heavily into it late 2012, early 2013. Taught one of the first classes at Stanford on it in early 2013. Actually, a lot of blockchain entrepreneurs came out of that class, and then the whole thing really took off in 2013.
That's great. Kind of just following from that, in 2014, when you thought about working on Ethereum, what was sort of the original vision, and sort of how has that changed so far from your perspective as the years have passed? And Balaji, if you were to comment on that later, how has your perspective still kind of being involved from the early on stages has changed about the ecosystem?
So my vision for Ethereum actually started off being incredibly unambitious, right? Because I was working on this project called Mastercoin, and Mastercoin was this initially this and always this layer 2 system on top of Bitcoin that was trying to expand the utility of the blockchain, going beyond just payments into other use cases, including decentralized exchange, betting, domain name systems, crowdfunding, like different kinds of contracts. And Mastercoin took what I described as the Swiss Army knife approach, where they said, here's 23 use cases. For each use case, let's make a feature, and let's make a protocol with 23 features. And I was kind of hired into this team very briefly, and my immediate approach is, can we try to take some of these features and immediately start generalizing them, right? Can we start, instead of creating 30 features for 30 use cases, come up with single features that can be designed in ways that are kind of more general purpose and abstract and allow a bunch of other sets of use cases. So I started off just kind of generalizing two-party financial contracts. And I basically said, instead of just having one parameter, which is the leverage, you turn it into the whole thing into a mathematical formula. Then from there, I created this white paper that I called Ultimate Scripting. And the idea was basically to replace Mastercoin's entire feature set with this programming language. And I sent this white paper off to the Mastercoin team. And I thought, like, this is obviously such a powerful and amazing and obviously the right way to go. And they said, this looks interesting, but this seems ambitious, and this seems like this will be a very far along step in our roadmap, and maybe we'll get to it in a year. And I'm like, guys, this is like so obviously the thing that you're supposed to do, and you're going to wait an entire year? Well, screw that, I'm going to do it myself. And started doing that, wrote the white paper myself, sent it to 15 people, and out of Ethereum came out of that. And over time, the vision kind of expanded almost even more with the feedback from other people than out of my own initiative, right? Other people started coming up with ideas, building applications, and I just realized, hey, wait, you can use general purpose blockchains for this other stuff. Hey, wait, you can use general purpose blockchains for this other stuff. And it kind of slowly dawned on, probably both me and the Ethereum community in general, that it really, general purpose blockchains really are general purpose and really are usable for a much wider variety of things than we thought blockchains should be used for back in 2013.
Got anything to add from your perspective of the project from the initial phases? Or do you have any comments to add from kind of your perspective from meeting and learning about the project early on to how you've seen it evolve now?
Yeah, well, in the early days, actually, I remember some of the folks who were working with Vitalik talked about like colored coins. And that was a big thing. And if you Google colored coins, you can see a video from that time period. And now, of course, we would call those tokens. And a lot of the concepts from tokens are similar. So it was interesting to see certain things which couldn't be done on the Bitcoin blockchain. First there was exit in the form of Ethereum, and now there's exit in the form of many other chains. And so a lot of that pent-up innovation has kind of come out over the last year and a half or so.
Got it. What does mainstream adoption mean to you? Where do you think we are in sort of just the adoption curve for cryptocurrencies in general, with Ethereum nearing 4 years, Bitcoin nearing 10 years? Kind of how do you look at that as a broader space?
So, where we are now, I think, is, in tens of millions of users land, right? And there's a difference between that versus hundreds of millions and obviously billions, right? And truly mainstream, probably in the US, would be when we're at hundreds of millions globally, it's probably mainstream in the US. When we're at billions globally, it's mainstream worldwide. I think it gets to mainstream in the US probably over the next decade or so, and might take more like 10 to 20 years for it to get mainstream worldwide. And that's still a very fast growth rate that kind of mirrors kind of the rise of the internet. And that's like one quantitative definition of what mainstream is.
So back in I think 2011 or 2012, I think I either wrote this article or kind of expressed this idea somewhere that I saw three possible paths for what at the time was just Bitcoin, where the analogies I made are kind of Esperanto, Linux, and the internet. And Esperanto was this kind of language that a guy named, I think, Ludwig Zamenhof came up with in the 1900s. And he thought that if we create this artificial language, which is kind of completely regular, maximally easy to learn, and it's politically neutral, then we could get the whole world to speak it. But it ended up just never taking off. And, it has a small enthusiast community, but it just never grows at all beyond that. And Linux, there's the joke in the Linux community that the year of Linux on the desktop is always like the current year plus 5 or whatever it is. And, there's the dream, and the dream never ends up being fully realized. But even still, Linux totally survives as a legitimate alternative to kind of more mainstream proprietary operating systems. And it has achieved like extremely real successes in places that it didn't even think of before, like, in mobile through Android and in servers. And so the internet is, Bitcoin is the next great invention since the beginning of the internet itself, and that whole kind of expansionist vision. I would say at this point, we've definitely gotten enough adoption that we're way past the phase where we have to worry about it becoming Esperanto. Whether it looks more like Linux or more like the internet, I think we're definitely still unsure. And it definitely still is one of those kind of time will tell sort of issues. Like, the big question is basically, are there going to be applications that actually do manage to kind of use blockchains and use blockchains kind of front and center in ways that, reach very large numbers of people? And realistically speaking, cryptocurrency is probably still the primary candidate for that, but there are other candidates that are slowly starting to come up. And if anything in that area takes off, then great. But even if it doesn't, the Linux outcome is still, I think, much stronger than anything that any of us were hoping for 5 years ago. And that would basically be a combination of a kind of fairly niche user base for cryptocurrencies, plus blockchains being used to notarize and secure a whole bunch of stuff, being used to improve the transparency of a bunch of mechanisms, doing a bunch of things in the back end, and kind of impacting the lives of billions of people indirectly. So we'll see.
Yeah, so I like that trichotomization of like niche, nerd, next big thing, right? But I would also add maybe to that, Linux, even though it was nerd, it actually did win on the desktop, just the next desktop, right? The mobile desktop, Android, and whatnot. And that's kind of an interesting way of thinking about the emergence of crypto. Is like Linux, it's initially a producer technology, right? It's something that makes developers' lives, better. It makes investors' lives better, like power users. And it's actually more useful if you're building a new, financial service, or you're trying to do new things with investing, than it is for the average person. And Linux went through that phase for a long time. It wasn't good for the average person, but it was great for the person who's building Google and Amazon and Facebook and so on. And then eventually it became useful for the average person through Android. And I think that might be an emergence path for how crypto works, where it's useful for all you guys. You can build new products and services with it. And then eventually just it becomes useful for the average person as it diffuses out from the developers and the producers.
Those are excellent points. I actually emerges with the next question I was going to ask, so I'll just skip that. But kind of just diving a bit deeper into this, kind of with that narrative and sort of these now possibilities, how do you 10x or 100x this ecosystem? Anywhere from technological side to distribution to use cases. How do you think about that?
Sure. So one angle that we're thinking about, there's many, but one angle is there's at least 3 ways to get crypto. You can mine it, you can buy it, you can earn it. And we did the hardest way first, which is setting up mining farms, and then buying came on a little bit later. And I think earning is still something that's open and interesting. And with the acquisition of Earn by Coinbase, we're working on ways to make earning crypto as easy as just like buying it. Just click a button and earn. And if that works, then it would work anywhere there's an internet connection, because you just click a task and make money. So that's one possible approach. There's other approaches as well, which are based around taking all these new coins that are coming out and really stressing the utility, right? Investment is generic, buy, sell, send, receive, but utility is specific. For example, send a shielded transaction with Zcash, or use BAT in your browser, or use rep for something, or use, like ZRX for something. They've got unique things you can do with them. And each of those individual markets and niches, maybe those can be pulled into cryptocurrency as well, because those cryptos end up doing something unique. So that's another approach potentially.
The other suggestion on the market side that I've raised a couple of times is just making it easier for people to buy small amounts of cryptocurrency in corner stores. So just increasing the accessibility of, I want $40 of crypto, just enough to participate in some applications a little bit and pay for a bunch of transaction fees. Because if you don't have even the small amounts of cryptocurrency, then it's hard to participate in public blockchain applications that are even kind of non-financial in nature. On the protocol side, I think solving the scalability challenges is obviously paramount, because otherwise, if the user base goes up by another 10x, then transaction fees are going to be going up to like $5 or $50. And another important thing is usability. And that includes kind of the traditional notion of usability, of making things kind of look and feel user-friendly and intuitive, but also what I call, I don't tend to talk about usability versus security. I talk about usability of security. So how do we make it kind of maximally user-friendly to use coins and to use them, but not kind of accidentally do things or have things happen to you that you really, really don't want, like $100,000 of your money disappearing into a black hole. And if those usability issues can be solved, I think it also cuts down the friction by quite a bit. And I know there are quite a lot of great projects that are starting to work on that.
So I guess as to follow on, Balaji, you had a company, Earn.com, that tried being able to kind of monetize users and in emails, and being able to give people cryptocurrencies for the first time as like the first way to acquire them. What are kind of just expanding on Vitalik's answers on how do you get people to initially own small amounts of cryptocurrencies? What were some of the learnings from doing Earn.com?
Yeah, so we actually, we got the company to like a 10 million run rate before we sold it. What are the learnings on that? Well, in theory, you can do lots and lots of different kinds of tasks, paid tasks. In practice, we found that those tasks that were crypto native in some way were the most popular initially, because that was a community that was familiar with it and that liked accepting crypto. I do think that over time, as we get better at smaller payments, as Vitalik was talking about, as we have more people who are familiar with crypto, it'll become very common to just like you tweet and you're sending information, or you fave somebody's tweet or whatever, you're sending like a bit of information effectively, but plus a lot of metadata. It'll be very, very common to do these tiny little payments as part of doing other actions within an app, right? So the blockchain is part of it. It's an important part of the app, but it's an enabling part of the app, and there's other stuff around it. And like Earn is like one manifestation of that, but there's others, and so that's one of the things I've thought a lot about.
Do you think a bigger audience for blockchains in general is machine-to-machine payments, or is it broader or bigger on the user side, if that makes sense? The biggest consumers, will they be machines paying machines, or is it humans interacting with machines?
Well, I think it's a completely new thing that you can have machines holding money that didn't exist before, that you could literally put a private key on a machine and actually have a true intelligent agent that could earn on its own and trade on its own. So simply the fact that that's possible is a new thing. I think it'll take a while for the fullness of that to be appreciated, but I know that it's already a subculture the trading bot subculture. There's all these people who communicate about this stuff. They do these algorithms online, and there's people who do this from college students all the way up to like large hedge funds do this. So there's definitely starting to be that movement. It's hard to say what the percentages will be in the future, though.
Vitalik, if you were to comment on some of the most underrated technological improvements in the Ethereum ecosystem, what would you say some of those things are?
Underrated technological improvements, I would probably say ZK at this point, ZK snarks, and specifically the extent to which you can use ZK snarks already to improve the privacy and scalability of applications. Like there are teams already, like there's the team being led by Barry Whitehead is probably the biggest one that are trying really hard on making things like privacy preserving tools for Ethereum, using snarks to create more scalable ways of transaction batching techniques to create more secure and more scalable versions of plasma chains and things like that. So I think there's definitely a lot of people that don't appreciate just kind of how close the technology is to reality even already.
Balaji, what would you say are the most overrated parts of the space?
Well, I always respect folks who are working hard and, respect entrepreneurs and so on. I do think that the whole, banking movement of, blockchain, not Bitcoin and private blockchain and so on, arguably overrated. And, the reason is I think a blockchain without a native digital asset is something which, you lose a lot of the benefits of a blockchain, I believe. And I think, private blockchains may have a V2 where people realize, hey, I'll do a private ICO. It'll be set up as a joint venture where you have 10 companies in a consortium, but they have actually a percentage of the token, and then it actually might work again. But I think the whole concept of blockchain without Bitcoin was a dead end.
A question for both of you. What is your favorite data structure?
Sparse Merkle trees.
Me? Standard binary tree is good. Hash map. I use them all.
Great. Vitalik, what is Ethereum 2.0? Just can you kind of go into some details on what it is, why it matters, and
So Ethereum 2.0 is this kind of catch-all term for a combination of different paths toward kind of seriously and fundamentally revamping the Ethereum blockchain that we've been working on over the last few years, where one of those is proof of stake, Casper. One of those is sharding. One of those is the switch from the current EVM, Ethereum virtual machine, to EWASM, the WebAssembly-based one. And one of them is a set of kind of miscellaneous improvements, including things like abstraction, improved protocol economics that I wrote a paper on recently, among other kinds of things like that. And Ethereum 2.0 is basically the kind of new version of Ethereum that will take all of these different improvements and put them together and essentially create what we believe is the best possible design for a general purpose blockchain, given what we know in 2018. And the goal is to kind of have a roadmap to migrate Ethereum over into kind of being that over the next few years.
So could you elaborate a bit more on when and what does that timeline look like, and sort of what goes into determining those things?
Sure. So one of the kind of big things that's made me a lot more optimistic about the whole thing over the last maybe 4 months specifically is that the research side has really kind of congealed and stabilized a huge amount, right? It feels like the research side at this point is like there's no kind of significant unsolved theoretical problems left. It's basically all details and kind of safety checking and verification. And right now, it's basically the kind of a software development slog, right? And we're familiar with software development slogs. So like if you recall Ethereum 1.0, going from the original first step of the Ethereum white paper to Ethereum 1.0 being released altogether took 19 months. And right now, we're actually very significantly ahead of the initial white paper release. So like I would say right now, Ethereum 2.0 and with where the protocol is and where the software development is probably where Ethereum 1.0 was possibly in maybe the fall of 2014. And that means, and there are already, like independent companies, like for example, Prismatic, Lighthouse, Status with Nimbus, and a couple of consensus parity, starting to work on kind of independent implementations of the Casper and charting spec. And I expect testnets to be coming out fairly soon. And then, we'll have in parallel work happening on testnets and along with formal verification of the protocol, auditing of the protocol, auditing of the code and implementations. And that'll at some point kind of culminate in, like some form of mainnet release. So
Just kind of quickly digging into this, what's sort of the rationale behind having other teams work in parallel, and kind of how do you see that versus Ethereum Foundation or the core protocol team also work on the
Sure.
timeline?
So I think the Ethereum community kind of really strongly believed in this idea of multiple implementations basically since day one. So for those who remember the 2014 to 15 development log, right, you had Python, Geth, and C++ basically developing the protocol in parallel all the way through, with the intention that all three of these implementations would be viable implementations of the protocol that people could run and use. And the goal behind this was a large part of it was political. Like basically, what we perceived as kind of failures of development centralization in the Bitcoin ecosystem that kind of arose from the existence of a single implementation there is something that we thought that we wanted to avoid, basically by saying there is no such thing as a reference implementation. And the reference is the protocol, and the protocol is, the yellow paper, and the protocol is distinct from implementations of the protocol. This time around, we're actually going a bit further, because there is one version of the protocol which is made by kind of people who are formally hired by the Ethereum Foundation as full-time developers, and that's the Python implementation. But Python is a slow language, and everyone knows that there's plenty of contexts in which Python is just set up that it's just not going to win, right? So it's and so that kind of naturally sets it up for kind of competition between outside entities to create the clients that people will end up using. And there will be many people that use Python as well, hopefully, but not in every context. And, so the Ethereum Foundation basically gives grants in part, and other companies are giving grants as well so in the case of Status, Nimbus is itself funded by Status's fairly large ICO raise, right? So the goal is to have this kind of robust dynamic community ecosystem. And on top of that, it has this very pragmatic dimension where it insulates the Ethereum community against the risk of any one of these teams failing and any one of these teams just ending up to not being able to figure out how to do software development correctly.
Yeah, one of the things actually that Brian Armstrong and me and Fred Ursum were impressed by Ethereum in the early days was that it did have a protocol spec. It did divide a protocol from a specific implementation. It had multiple implementations. One of the things we've actually been thinking about doing recently is publishing like a Coinbase API standard that would have maybe a similar effect for what we do with security, because not all blockchains provide the ability for you to separate cold storage, signing, and broadcasting, and that's like a critical kind of thing. And there's other kinds of things like how can you do staking, for example, in a way that it's not all with a hot wallet and what have you. So there's aspects of potentially security where we could publish API specs and have people code to them.
So we've already started to receive a lot of questions from the audience. So if you have any other questions, we'll keep ask them on Twitter with the hashtag #ETHSanFrancisco, and we'll kind of roll them up in a few minutes. But I'll ask one that I just received, which is kind of for both of you. What do you wish people in this space would stop doing that you constantly see happening a lot?
Just stop fighting online. Build stuff.
And I would edit that slightly to fight online constructively, but and I do think disagreement is important, and proposals need to be criticized, and like I need to be criticized, and Vlad needs to be criticized, and like every single research, every single idea, regardless of of who it comes from, needs to kind of pass a trial by fire, because ultimately it will pass a trial by fire by people who are much more malevolent than trolls inside the Ethereum community.
That makes sense. Kind of branching off from one of your previous answers, should everything be open source in this space? How do you kind of think about what does it mean to have like the IP kind of advantage to what should be private versus public, and kind of how do you think through that, or how should one think through that in this space?
Well, a possibly perhaps trivial but useful, limit case is your private keys are not open source, right? So obviously not everything is going to be open source. You're going to keep something private. And then there's a continuum there between, okay, what is as valuable? What are the crown jewels like your private keys? And what can you put out in public? And one of the awesome things about blockchains is they offer a new way to monetize open source things of all kinds. I think we're going to see blockchain versions of many other kinds of protocols. We've got already blockchain competitors for DNS, but we'll see blockchain competitors for SMTP and other kinds of protocols coming out there. I'm already seeing them. And so I think a larger percentage of open source projects can be monetized. So we'll see a larger percentage of things that will be open source with a blockchain component.
I mean, I would say the general principle is that it's relatively speaking more important to open source things that are closer to the bottom layer and closer to the center, and less important to open source things that are kind of closer to the edges and periphery, and particularly kind of not protocols, but software that participates in protocols. So one trivial example of something where I think the interesting bits will be proprietary pretty much forever is software involved in like market making, arbitrage, and generally participating in financial markets. But the financial market itself being a fully open source decentralized exchange is something that I think is great, right? So like that is just one example of where the core periphery boundary is one good way of thinking about it.
One of the things that's interesting is in this space, people will say, oh, you could just take a coin, you could take a chain, you could take a smart contract, and you can just fork it endlessly. And where's the scarcity come in? And related to the concept of do we open source everything? One thing I think is implicit is a lot of the value derives from the backlink structure. Like the reason that when the BCH BTC split, that everything didn't just go to BCH in the same way as to BTC is a lot of things were pointing at the longer chain, right? And so the backlink structure, I think, is something that is a form of scarcity that we don't normally think about, that is distinct from whether the source code is out there in public, is whether things are actually pointing to and trusting that particular database or that particular source code or instantiation.
Got it. I'm also going to start merging in questions that are coming in from the audience, so we'll kind of just have a mix of both versus doing a separate segment on just audience questions. So another interesting question that came up is kind of what do you think are some of the cool things, anything from technological to community, that's happening in other blockchains that Ethereum should adopt?
On the community side, one of the things I love about Zcash is this kind of separation between Zcash Foundation and Zcash Co. And where like Zuko is part of one and not the other, and they have and I think that they've actually done a kind of quite good job of just setting up a community in a way in a way where there is a kind of limited level of influence in kind of both one kind of person and one organization. Another one of the interesting ideas that I think Zuko came up with is this idea that practical control over protocol development and control over trademark ownership should be maximally separate. And that's, I think, an interesting idea that probably in Ethereum and probably other public blockchains should consider adopting, because unfortunately there isn't really a good way to kind of have a trademark not be owned by anyone. But this does seem like a kind of pragmatic approach that does kind of minimize the centralization harm that can come out of that issue particularly.
Balaji, I guess to add on to that, what are some of the technological advancements that you're tracking personally outside of what's going on at Coinbase?
Well, certainly we're looking at all the privacy coin related stuff, ZK snarks, Starks, bulletproofs. We are, I can't talk about everything we're looking at, but, we're obviously aware of, stable coins. We're aware of, what's going on with, like things like token curated registries. We pay attention to a lot of the stuff, but the thing is Coinbase's role is sort of to mainstream blockchain, which means that by necessity, we're not on the cutting edge, right? Like if something is truly on the cutting edge, if it's on the bleeding edge, it's not really ready for tens of millions of users typically. So we try to, do what Apple does, which is take a technology that's in its spring and it's proven itself a bit, and it's not going to have like a CVE on day one. And when it's ready for getting to tens of millions of users, then we'll mainstream it. So those are kinds of things that we're looking at.
This is a really good segue into our next part, which is we're going to steal the underrated or overrated segment from Tyler Cowen's podcast. So I'll name a handful of topics, and the way you kind of play this is you have to say, is it underrated or overrated, and a quick answer on why. So we'll start off with ZK snarks.
I'd say about correctly rated at this point. Like they are very powerful, and I think general purpose privacy or general purpose zero knowledge proofs is like a really huge advancement in cryptography, right? Because if you look, I was barely following cryptography maybe 10 to 15 years ago, back when zero knowledge proofs were this kind of application specific protocol, and you had to come up with specific protocols for specific use cases, and it was like super lame. And now it's the fact that we're fairly close to the point where you can make privacy preserving protocols for just very large classes of things involving just abstract programming languages is huge. And I do think that the community recognizes that.
Underrated or overrated? ZK snarks or Starks?
Well, I think ZK snarks are still underrated. People in this audience know what they are, but after Sapling, comes out in a few weeks, I think it just gets mainstream to a much greater extent. And we haven't even yet explored where it's going to get. And then with Starks and bulletproofs, I think it's going to go to the next level because we eliminate the trusted setup, and we have even faster transactions and possibly smaller, proof sizes. So I think all those technologies are underrated relative to what the general population knows about them.
Non-fungible tokens, underrated or overrated?
On the margin, I'd say overrated. It's, I don't know, I'm like suspicious of things that get too buzzwordy. So I throw token curated registries in the same bucket.
I guess we'll skip the next question.
Yeah, I'm an investor in CryptoKitties. I do think that in the long term, NFTs will be important. I think like today, if you go and look at DApp Radar, there's not a lot of volume in buying and selling collectibles and NFTs. But I do think that as they start getting hooked into video games and there are the backends for things like their potions and swords within video games, I think that's going to be the thing that pulls them up in the medium term. So overrated maybe today, but underrated in the long term. And eventually we'll get, what people have always talked about, blockchain real estate and so on. But it'll take a while.
What about stablecoins?
Globally speaking, I'd say underrated. I still think people and a lot of people don't realize the extent to which stablecoins solve one of people's biggest concerns with the cryptocurrency space, which is that in order to use these applications, you have to expose themselves to volatility. And with stable coins, a lot of that goes away, and you can actually use applications that just look like regular applications involving dollars. And I'm also, very happy that very recently it seems like there was this big outburst of kind of new stablecoin companies coming along. Like there's Circle's announcements. There's, True USD. There's like in Crypto DT over, there's I forget. There's like there's a bunch of them now, right? And that means like first of all, it's nice to see that there's more. It's nice to see that these new ones are kind of more more reputable and audited and so forth than the ones that came before. And it's and I'm also very happy to see that MakerDAO and DAI is kind of doing well and continuing to prove itself and holding its value despite like overseeing ETH dropping in price by more than 80%. I think it's still a very an impressive accomplishment for a crypto-backed stablecoin to stay stable through that period. So, and in the long run, these kinds of tokens are a kind of way for traditional financial systems to kind of upload themselves to crypto land if they want to.
Yeah, I would say stablecoins are underrated today for a couple of reasons. But with that said, I distinguish between two kinds of stablecoins at least. There's multiple kinds, but I'd say there's one class of stablecoins that I'm somewhat bearish on, and those I'd consider the Rube Goldberg machine smart contract things that try to manufacture a stable result out of a fundamentally unstable underlying digital currency, I would argue. And then by contrast, there are the ones which I'd call, let's say, audit-heavy tech-light stablecoins, where really what they're selling is trust, the trust that you can go and redeem it for good old-fashioned US dollars or whatever fiat currency underneath. And those I'm more bullish on because I think those are actually what people really want with a stablecoin is they want the trust of redemption, which means stablecoins are more like an insurance business than like other kinds of crypto businesses because it's a question of what is the risk that I won't be able to redeem something. If you can solve those problems and if you can have a stablecoin that people really trust and that doesn't have redemption risk, then I think in the medium term we'll think of, like fintech before stablecoin is like mobile before iPhone, in the sense that every fintech company, if you could just have a digital dollar, a blockchain-based dollar, if you didn't need to do a banking partnership or something like that, you just go and program right away with a digital dollar based on the blockchain. And I think that's a really important medium-term thing that could happen if we get a working and functional stablecoin.
I think one important point in favor of crypto-backed Ruby Goldberg machine stablecoins is that they're more likely to survive an unfriendly regulatory and banking environment.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I think if you're trying to fundamentally represent a U.S. dollar, I think you can't, avoid the question of interfacing with the U.S. banking and regulatory system. It's kind of like this: if you had an app that got popular enough on Facebook's platform, eventually Facebook will knock on your door, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have something which is representing hundreds of billions of dollars, eventually, there will be some nexus to the U.S. government and so on. It's just like, it's kind of inevitable. So that's kind of a fundamental premise, and we could disagree on that.
Mm-hmm. Kind of on that note, how do you look at decentralized organizations? Overrated or underrated?
I would probably say is somewhat overrated in the especially in the short term. And part of and I will, this is definitely a change in opinion. I was kind of more idealistic about this subset of the space maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think the problem is that, first of all, if you try to create complete decentralized organizations, there's just game theoretic issues and misalignments in pretty much every kind of governance that you can come up with. But also, I think a lot of the value that doesn't necessarily needs to come from kind of fully fledged, decentralized corporations in the sky running on the blockchain. It can come from incentive alignments that come out of kind of smaller and more purpose-specific gadgets. So like the kind of DAICO that I came up with at the end of last year is probably one example of that. I mean, things like assurance contracts, things like different kinds of like public good funding mechanisms, different kinds of like quadratic voting gadgets or whatever. I think kind of more self-contained things like that are where you can kind of see more kind of stable and realistic value in the short term.
Yeah, so I'm bullish on DOs, very bearish on DAOs. Like I don't believe in the autonomous aspect for a while. And why bullish on DOs? Well, I think we have more and more teams that are remote work based in multiple jurisdictions, and I think in the not too distant future, quote, incorporating or signing contracts on the Ethereum blockchain or other blockchains like that, smart contract based blockchains, is going to become pretty popular for remote teams. And you can imagine like a blockchain-based Slack or a blockchain DocuSign, a BlockySign that just allows these quote decentralized organizations to agree on something, vote, and then allocate funds with a proof of stake vote or some other kind of vote, just even a multi-sig kind of vote. And I think that's kind of cool, where you don't necessarily need to take the entire DAO concept. You can take pieces of it and just be like, oh, here's how we get multi-sig, for 3 people who live in 3 different countries under 3 different legal systems. We don't have to have them incorporated in Delaware. We can have something on the blockchain that's pretty lightweight. I think I'm bullish on that kind of thing.
We'll do like one last one on overrated, underrated. Off-chain scaling. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm actually, I really believe off-chain is very underrated, in the sense of, for most applications, unless you're Vitalik, unless you're Zuko, unless you're somebody who's a cryptographer or a very knows systems programming and so on, most people aren't going to be able to do that. And instead, they should keep most of their state in a normal Postgres database and have blockchain functionality, right? So blockchain, like the blockchain will provide balances, it'll provide addresses, your users can send and receive funds, and you can keep your images and your normal user data or whatever in Postgres, like a normal kind of thing. And so then your app has, quote, 2 data stores. It's got Postgres and it's got the blockchain over here. And I think that kind of model is going to be like a pretty important one, a hybrid model. And moreover, anything that you can do off-chain, you should do off-chain, because the blockchains are relatively low capacity right now. You want to batch transactions, you don't want to pay fees, you want to try to do as much as you can off-chain and then just write the absolute minimal digest on-chain. So I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger thing. One thing I wrote about 2 years ago that I'd love to see, maybe somebody here can hack it tonight, is something similar to PostGIS, right? So PostGIS is basically a set of add-ons for Postgres that adds, range queries, XY, latitude, longitude support to Postgres, which is normally just a standard relational database. I'd love to see a post chain that does the same kind of thing, but adds blockchain functionality. So it makes it easy to ingest a blockchain, do relational queries, to search and sort blockchain-based data structures, and an add-on like that. And that's the kind of thing I think would help a lot, where you're doing a lot of stuff off-chain and then you have a digest that is written to the blockchain and it costs you something. I think that's going to be an important paradigm.
We'll move on to sort of the next couple of questions we've gotten in. Vitalik, what role has threshold relay and other improvements from the Dfinity ecosystem have played into the design of Ethereum 2.0?
So we're not using threshold relays specifically, and both because we prefer being a leaner on cryptographic assumptions, and also because just to kind of dial back a bit, right? Well, threshold relay is this kind of it's 2 things. One is it's a consensus algorithm, and 2, it's a in-blockchain random number generator, and it relies pretty heavily on kind of BLS signatures and distributed key generation. And I personally dislike distributed key generation because it's this like big extra load of cruft that you have to add into the protocol spec somewhere. And we're taking a somewhat different approach, where we use BLS signature aggregation, which also uses BLS signatures and also gets kind of very high efficiencies from combining signatures together in the same way a threshold relay does. But we use this in combination with a different kind of proof of stake algorithm that uses a ghost-based fork choice rule. And this is nice, and the goal that we're targeting is actually, we do not want the security of the blockchain to be fully dependent on the security of a random number generator algorithm, right? Like we want to be able to prove that the blockchain is secure, even if the attacker chooses what all the random numbers are. And surprisingly enough, with a blockchain algorithm where you have enough validators participating at the same time, you can actually do that. Then for a random number generator, we have Justin's entire line into VDF research. And while that's technically not necessary for the blockchain to work, that does kind of increase the security margin of the system. So it decreases the minimum safe committee size, for example, by maybe a factor of 2 or 3 in practice. And it increases the safety tolerances by a few percent. And at the same time, random numbers are something that's useful to a wide array of layer 2 applications. And so we are building in a random beacon in chain, but we are using verifiable delay functions instead of verifiable random functions. So it's somewhat different technology.
Balaji, a question for you from the audience. What geographies will we first see a mass adoption in terms of a use case for cryptocurrencies, and sort of why is that the case, or will that be the case?
That's a great question. There is a thesis that it's going to be like the Venezuelas of the world and so on, where cryptocurrency has mass adoption. I actually, as sympathetic as I am to the Venezuelan people, and as much as I do believe that does illustrate an important use case for Bitcoin, I do think that cryptocurrency is probably going to have to prove itself in the developed world first, and then it will filter out to everywhere else. And the reason for that is any technology in the early stages has bugs and horrible UX and various shortcomings that only relatively wealthy people who have the time and the energy and don't have a chaotic situation around them, and they have good internet and they can download a multi-gigabyte blockchain and they don't have a light wallet, all that type of stuff. Only folks who have all of that, time and internet, I think are going to get this thing off the ground, and then eventually get it to hundreds of millions and then get to billions. And I think it'll have a similar emergence mode to smartphones, where the developed world subsidized them and got them to scale, and then they were cheap enough for the developing world to buy into them. So I'm a huge long-term bull on like banking the unbanked with crypto and so on. I do believe that eventually does happen. I just don't think that's where it starts.
Yeah, and I'd probably generally agree. I'd say while we're in the enthusiast phase, it'll continue to be the case that the map of where the blockchain nodes are will roughly track the map of where the brightest night lights are if you look at the Earth from space. But in the long term, I definitely do, and I also agree that like banking the unbanked, kind of improving financial systems in cases where kind of cross-national kind of cooperation is currently weakest, and where existing governance structures are weakest and most hostile is one of the most interesting areas where they can be applied as well.
So in the interest of time, we'll just ask two more questions. One, just to kind of come back to something that was said earlier, Coinbase was involved with crypto.org, and the Ethereum Foundation is involved with a grant program. How can others get involved with these initiatives?
Yeah, so we have a charitable arm called givecrypto.org. Give Crypto is just spelled like that. That Brian set up, and that does charitable work in the space.
So for the Ethereum Foundation grant program, I mean, there's two ways to participate, right? One is to apply for a grant, and the other is if you have a lot of money, then you yourself can just become a grant-giving body, and you can either decide whom to give grants to yourself, or you can kind of piggyback onto who the Ethereum Foundation gives money yourself, because those lists are completely public. So either of those two is highly welcome, and we're on the project side, we're actively looking for projects, so doing work in scalability, particularly usability, including what I call usability of security, and that includes both the wallet and the kind of smart contract programming side. Including things like formal verification. It includes layer 2 systems of pretty much every kind. So it's if you want to build a piece of the Ethereum ecosystem, the opportunity and kind of do that as a full-time thing, the opportunity is there for you.
And lastly, Balaji already answered what he would like to hack on potentially this weekend. What would you make if you were a hacker at this event?
Well, FOMO 3D was pretty awesome. Something like that, I think, really is, it just is something you could only do on the blockchain, So I'd love to see stuff like that, which I think push the limits of what you can do with smart contracts. I'd love to see something like post-chain, what I just talked about. I think that'd be very useful. Those two in particular, I think would be cool.
Reputation systems are probably still kind of an interesting area that we probably haven't. There was a lot of enthusiasm back in 2014, but then it kind of petered off, and I think we might be at the point where the infrastructure is there to kind of make another go at that whole area. I would also say kind of privacy preserving applications are in general are an interesting category. Any kind of developer middleware, kind of and particularly kind of more possibly decentralized alternatives to existing kind of more centralized forms of middleware. Solutions in wallets and securities solutions, another important area. Like basically and also in general, just look at kind of what you think are pain points that are seen by kind of developers in the ecosystem and try to have a go at solving any of them.
Perfect. Well, Balaji, Vitalik, thank you so much for taking out the time to share your views with us tonight. And wish all of them the best for hacking.
Hey, hi, hello. All right, back to the hackathon. Thank you guys so much for this amazing panel, back to the hackathon. We are now going to be hearing from some of our sponsors. This is only here because of the hard work of the team and the sponsors. So we're going to invite a few of them up to talk about what they're working on. And they're also, some of them are going to be announcing some prizes. So this is probably worth listening to.
First up is Sean from MakerDAO.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Sean Brennan. My journey here started about a year ago at the ETH Waterloo Hackathon, where I made a hack and joined the team shortly after. I started as a developer and now do technical partnerships and spread our vision, which is a stablecoin is needed for mainstream adoption of cryptocurrencies. I'm really glad that we get a favorable verdict from Balaji and Vitalik. And really when we're growing this, we need to have the corner stores and people earning crypto to be able to trust that it's not going to halve in value, and they don't really care that it's going to double in value. They want a risk-free stablecoin. And what we've made and launched in December of 2017 is a stablecoin called DAI. It's been live and working, and you can check it out on CoinMarketCap. And we invite you, when you're making your hack today, you can and should use this for any app that has a payment or requires a deposit, because it's an ERC20 token, and it literally takes 2 lines of code to add it to your app. And instead of having the volatility of Ether or another coin, you can trust DAI to be stable and useful. What differentiates us from other cryptocurrency, from other stablecoins, is the concept of a CDP, which is a collateralized debt position. So basically, new DAI can be created or destroyed by interacting with a CDP and locking up your Ether. And we have a 2,000 DAI prize for the winner of that. And the screenshot is from an Apache superset, which is an excellent framework for data visualization. And there's many others that you can use. And for this, we have a Maker Query API that we want you to use for your data. The other one is much more open-ended, lets your imagination run wild. You can combine DAI with any other company here. Special shout-outs to privacy-preserving transactions, as well as fiat off-ramps with Wire, and many other. You really can, when you talk to other companies, ask them, how can I use this with DAI? And we have a 2,500 DAI prize for that. And for help, we have a booth in the back, as well as a technical talk at 12:20 tonight. And we have a very active and helpful chat room, chat.makerdao.com. And we have a very active subreddit. And so good luck hacking. Have a great time. Thank you.
Thank you, MakerDAO. Yeah, just leave it on there. I think that would be great. So next up, Sebastian from Ripio.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sebastian Serrano from Ripio. We are the largest cryptocurrency wallet in South America. We have over 200,000 users across Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. And I'm here to talk to you about RCN. RCN is a peer-to-peer credit network based on smart contracts, and it runs on the Ethereum blockchain. And we created RCN because in this world, there is more than 2 billion people that doesn't have access to banking. There are even more that have access, but access to credit is very expensive. And we think that this technology can be very impactful in two. One thing is like access to credit, but also connecting the world. Crypto makes very easy to transfer wealth worldwide. So we created RCN to connect borrowers and lenders from all over the world. The network is, or the system is very simple. It's based on a simple smart contract that has many agents. There are identity providers, co-signers, oracles for pricing. And this is all open source. Everyone can participate. And we have prices on anyone that makes integrations with the network or build different implementations for the identity providers, connect with other that exist, or build co-signers or ways to collateralize the loans. Thank you and happy hacking.
Thank you, RCN. And next is McLean from New Cipher.
Hi, everyone. My name is McLean Wilkinson. I'm one of the co-founders of NewCipher. NewCipher is the data privacy layer for blockchain and decentralized applications. So if you're building some sort of privacy-preserving application where you need to store, share, or manage private or sensitive data, that's where we come in and where we can help. We have two core technologies that you can use this weekend. One is proxy re-encryption, which is a kind of more scalable form of public key encryption. So we basically use this as a primitive to create an access control layer so you can control who can and cannot access the data inside of your DApp. So you can imagine building, let's say, a decentralized end-to-end encrypted group chat, like a patient-controlled medical record system, maybe some sort of data marketplace where you give people a way to monetize their data by selling it to researchers or advertisers, and it's only conditionally decrypted once payment has happened. The other is our fully homomorphic encryption library, Nufi, which is a GPU-accelerated FHE library and is currently the fastest available FHE library. It's over 100x performance improvements over previous benchmarks. And we're actually super interested in applying this to smart contracts, so creating privacy-preserving smart contracts. Actually, 3 weeks ago at ETH Berlin, Nufi was used to build Sputnik, which was the first ever fully homomorphic encryption smart contract that got executed on stage as the winning submission of ETH Berlin. So we'd be super pumped to see any of you take that even further. We have a workshop in Classroom 1 at 11 p.m. By my co-founder and our CTO. We're going to be here all weekend. We're in the big NU shirts, so come and grab us if you need help. If you can't find us, we have a Discord that you can join. We're usually hanging out there, so any technical questions, we're happy to help. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you so much for that, NewCipher. Next up, we have Thibaut from Liquidity Network. There you are. The clicker's right on the table.
Yes, so hello everyone. My name is Thibaut. I'm from Liquidity Network, and we do provide second layer scaling solution for Ethereum, especially on payment system. So what we do provide is free instant transactions and swaps for Ethereum. We've been live on mainnet since June this year, and actually we do provide you like easy way to do second layer scaling solutions. So we do provide an iOS, Android, and web wallet that you can integrate directly into your applications. And also, we do provide you with payment requests and atomic swap for every ERC20 you can have. And with all of that, we do provide you an SDK, so you integrate directly within your applications. And obviously, with that, we do have like some cool ideas that you can implement in this weekend. And we've put some bounties on it. First one is a Hub Explorer, so you can have lots of analytics about what's happening off-chain, and in order to get some more insights about what's happening and also bind it to some off-chain content. Then you do have like tipping system, so you can tip everyone that is making good content on Peeps or any other platform, because because you do integrate it within your application and the SDK. Then you also have a good thing, which is about gaming. What about having like buying off-chain microtransactions for every application you can have? You can just buy New Life on any games you want, like Candy Crush or everything off-chain for microtransactions. And last, like super cool application for microtransaction is about live streaming. You can like pay full transactions for like on Twitch if you want to participate in a chat, being really involved. You can like tip everyone or get rewarded. And if you really want to get onto it, we do host a workshop, so come and see us. And we also have a table so you can get help. So hope to see you at our workshop, 11:40 Theater, which is right behind the stairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Liquidity Network. Up next, Mo Dong from Seller Network.
Hi everyone, my name is Seller. My name is Mo from Seller. I've been told that I only have 2 minutes, but I still want to start with a story. So one day, Alice and Bob come to blockchain and they want to play a chess. So Alice deployed the smart contract on the blockchain and makes a move. Okay, why are you guys looking at me so weird? I'm just waiting for the block confirmation time. So this is like exactly what blockchain applications user experience feel like, and this is like what exactly Seller is trying to solve. And we invite you to try out the most advanced off-chain application technology we build through our C-Wallet applications. You can try out in our booth. So definitely come to our booth and try out what is like the most advanced off-chain applications that you can use. And we prepared a lot of awards and prizes for you to win by trying the interactive and responsive applications built on top of Seller. So Seller is building the most advanced off-chain scaling platform that is not only supporting payment but also any arbitrary off-chain smart contract transactions. And after seeing what you can build with Seller, you would definitely want to join us to build. So we provide full support on site, and we provide iOS and Android SDKs, and we provide development devices. And our workshop is at 12:20. And if you have any questions, we are here to answer any kind of technical questions you have. And our booth is like right at the back. So we provide 3 awards, one for the most innovative ideas using Seller Network, and the other is for the most complete implementation, and finally the best user experiences. So we invite you to join us to experience, win, build, and hopefully have some fun this weekend with Seller. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seller. Next up, we have Jack from Scale Labs. Yay!
All right, hello. Nice to meet everybody. I'm Jack O'Halloran from Scale Labs. I'm the CEO. So we have the fully decentralized layer 2 scalability network. What we do that I think is very unique is we help you run smart contracts in layer 2. So key point here is, one, we try to make it easy for you, okay? It should be easy to set up. It should be easy to manage. It's really critical for us to have that experience for developers. 2, it has to be fast. So our goal is for you to be able to run fast, smart contracts, high throughput in a layer 2 environment at low cost. It has to be cost effective. That's really critical. The third piece here is it has to be secure. And I think that's hands down by far the most important element of running a layer 2 scalability network. So I have a couple quick announcements. So number 1, we've been heads down coding. We've been not marketing. We've done pretty much 0 marketing this year, but we've been writing a lot of code, and we're actually getting ready to launch a fully integrated testnet soon on Ethereum. So any of you developers, engineers, entrepreneurs, please come talk to us about the Scale Innovator program. we'd love for you to be a part of the first cohort to actually run a scale chain in layer 2 and run Ethereum smart contracts in scale 2. The second piece of this is that this is a fully open, mineable network. If you're interested in running a node, come talk to us. We're trying to build an amazing community. This is an open source, decentralized foundation, and come talk to us at our booth and be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scale Labs. Up next, Brendan from Dharma.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brendan Forster. I'm from the Dharma protocol. And we are the open protocol for borrowing and lending crypto assets on the Ethereum blockchain. Basically, we build smart contract infrastructure and developer tools that make it easy to create lending applications of kind of arbitrary complexity. Dharma is a borderless, permissionless, and programmable credit network. What do these things mean? It means that you can access Dharma from anywhere you have an internet connection via a mobile device, a computer, or even server side as well. We are a permissionless network. So we are fully open sourced. We are deployed to the Ethereum blockchain. Anyone can create an application on top of Dharma. We don't even need to know about it. And third, we are programmable. So we support any kind of lending use case, from peer-to-peer micro-lending to support Venezuelans, all the way to native cryptocurrency transactions, such as using your CryptoKitty as collateral to get a loan. We have a wish list for hacker projects here this evening and over the next couple of days. So we're offering $2,500 worth of Ether to a project that builds any one of these things or any of the more creative uses of Dharma. But a couple of ideas for you tonight. Augur prediction markets are represented by ERC20 shares. And so they are tradable and useful for Dharma loans. And so you could short sell or get leverage in an Augur prediction market by using Dharma. You could also buy CryptoKitties or Gods Unchained cards or any other ERC721 token on credit. So if you want to create an application in which people can pre-buy a card and then pay for it over time, you can do that using Dharma protocol. You could also build a mobile-first loan originator and pipe it to one of our live Dharma debt relayers, such as Blockboard. And finally, you could build a loan-filling bot by, again, polling the order book on a Dharma debt relayer and filling orders that meet certain pre-specified criteria. If you're interested in building any of these, check out developer.dharma.io or come talk to us. We're in the back right next to the circular room here on the first floor. We have a bright orange table and we're very friendly. So we hope to meet a lot of you here. Best of luck, happy hacking, and I hope to meet a lot of you soon. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Dharma. Next up, we have Raf from Trust Token. Welcome to the stage.
Hey, welcome to the hackathon, everybody. So I'm Raphael. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO of Trust Token. So Vitalik and Balaji just talked about stable coins, and they mentioned TrueUSD. TrueUSD is our company's first product, and it is the #1 largest regulated stablecoin in the world. So Trust Token is a platform for creating asset-backed tokens that you can easily buy and sell around the world. For example, gold-to-gold token or dollar-to-dollar token. And our first product, TrueUSD, is a stable coin that you can redeem 1-for-1 for US dollars. So my background is on the technical side. I studied computer science at Stanford and was working at Google Brain before I founded this company. And what got me excited about this idea is I saw the new crypto financial system emerging and realized that there was going to be a shift of potentially trillions of dollars of real world assets onto the blockchain. So here's a bit about us. We launched our first product, TrueUSD, in March. And TrueUSD is now at over $115 million market cap, and it's the largest regulated stablecoin in the world. It's listed on 15 exchanges globally, including Binance, Bittrex, Upbit, and we just closed a $20 million financing round led by A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz Crypto. That's a little bit of what we've accomplished so far, but our vision is to bring $1 trillion worth of real-world assets into this new open financial system. And our mission is to open access to financial opportunities and global trade. So if you're interested in joining a team that is working in blockchain and has a real product with real users, please get in touch with us. We're based here in San Francisco. We're a team of 25. You can find our job postings at trusttoken.com/careers. We've also got a booth over there in the back. And my email address is right here, r@trusttoken.com. Please send me an email, and I'd love to have me or someone from my team meet with you during the event. We're especially looking for web developers, whether you do front end, back end, or full stack. And would love to talk with you about joining our team. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Trust Token. Up next, Bryce from XYO.
Hello. XYO is a location oracle for any smart contract platform to call upon, and it turns the real world into an API. It's a middleware protocol that essentially provides an entry point into a system of connected devices that relies on a chain of zero-knowledge proofs in order to prove with a high degree of certainty location data. So the issues, to resolve a smart contract solely relying on GPS, it's quite problematic for the reasons listed here. So what XYO does is we first establish a bidirectional proof of location. And the primary bidirectional heuristic for location is actually proximity, since multiple parties can validate the occurrence of said interaction. So our system actually generates certainty via two mechanisms, a bound witness interaction and a proof of origin chain. So a bound witness interaction is between two nodes, and it happens over any radio medium, and it's a handshake that basically validates a physical interaction, and this creates a chain of origin blocks. And the proof of origin chain basically guarantees with a high degree of certainty that two or more sources of information originated from a single source. So I should have hit this slide earlier. But all this is happening through our middleware, essentially. The first of which we have are the location witnesses. They're called sentinels, and they're sensors and they're beacons, and they're collecting all this information, all this physical location information. And then the bridges take that data. Sometimes the sentinels are offline, sometimes they're online. But they take that information, they bring it online, and they relay it to archivists. And archivists are just a distributed network of storage. And they store all this information in order for diviners to come in and analyze. And diviners are analyzing, they're assigning certainty scores to these chains, and they're providing answers to any sort of query on the front end, saying, where's my package or where's my fleet of trucks? That all goes through a diviner. But beyond building out our network, our engineers are actually developing a lot of really cool applications in order for, and tools, I should say. So the first one that we made is called Deploy, and it basically automates a lot of the configurations and the minutia that goes into deploying a smart contract. And basically it expedites things in a way so that you could quickly change your smart contract code and upload it to a backend server client. Sorry. Then we got the Dash. The Dash is super cool, and it basically really expedites your querying capabilities and streamlines this whole process. It does this by tracking live events and loading historic events. And lastly, we have the Dapper. And the Dapper is a dApp in and of itself with a generic UI that exposes the internals of your smart contract, and it allows you to interface with any smart contract functions. And yeah, it's a really, really useful tool. So if you want to like get in touch with me, here's my information. I'd love to tell you guys more about what we're working on. And thank you, ETHGlobal, for putting this event on. So, and we have a tech talk at 4:30 tomorrow, and it'll be awesome.
Thanks, dude. Nice. All right, so there was a couple prizes in there, but there are more prizes. So who likes prizes? Does anyone like prizes? If you like prizes, you may want to pay attention a little bit to this.
Prizes?
Prizes, anybody?
For the
Come
people in
on,
the
I want
back?
to hear something about prizes. You want to win some stuff, right? What's the sign? That's awesome. Yeah, there's over like $100,000 worth of prizes here. We need to share some of this with you. You go ahead.
So $6,000 Chainlink, best use of Chainlink smart contracts. Also $6,000 to the best project deployed to POA network. $3,500 for the most innovative use of Seller's mobile SDK, and they have some others as well. $2,500 for the most creative application built on Dharma.
Cool. Kyber is offering $3,000 for the most innovative use case of Kyber liquidity. Loopring is offering $3,500 for the most creative use of the Loopring protocol. You would win $1,000 from Coinbase for the best mobile responsive dApp using the Coinbase wallet. And you can also get $5,000 for the best use of the Graph protocol. $1,500 would, oh, sorry. If you build the best application built on Blockboard and or Loan Scan, you would get $1,500. That's not bad.
Best usage of Shift protocol, 7 ETH. Most innovative prototype using RCN, 1,500 USD. 4,500 for the best use of the Maker API. 3,000 best use set developer platform. And 10,000 for the best use of Bloom protocol.
0x, yeah? Nice. So best use of the 0x protocol will get you 2,500 0x tokens. The best presentation of audit reports from QuantStamp will get you $2,000. Best Connect Hub app will get you $3,000. Most captivating project on the new Cypher technology will get you 2,500. And the best chain abstraction layer integration will get you 2 ETH.
If you weren't listening, you can find all of these at ethsanfrancisco.com/prizes for future reference.
And that will actually describe all of the prizes that are available during the hackathon. Next. So yeah, we want to talk about all of the sponsors and say a giant thank you to the sponsors that have come through. We're going to be telling you guys a bit about it. Can we give a round of applause for all of the sponsors, please? This is an amazing venue. This is all made possible by these great sponsors.
So the sponsors make these events possible. The gold sponsors, Maker, New Cypher, I'm good with the clicker, I promise. RCN, Seller, ZK Capital, Liquidity Network.
And the silver sponsors are Chainlink, Consensus, Harbor, Blockboard, Brave, ADX, Kyber Network, The Graph, Connext, Set, Scale, and Blockchain Capital. This is, I believe, still silver, Shift, Augur, QuantStamp, 0x, Clearmatics, and Dharma.
So thank you to our silver sponsors as well.
Bronze.
Bronze sponsors now, Compound, Coinbase Wallet, Bloom, Initialized Capital, Gollum, iCash, DYDX, Circle, Crypto Baseball, Ethereum Community Fund, Veil, Gitcoin, FBG Capital, Trust Token for USD, XYO Network, Token Data, Wire, POA Network, Nervos, Spark Labs, Amise Go, Loopring, Keep, Every DApp, Native, the Bounties Network, and Zilliqa.
Woo!
So big thank you for all our sponsors.
That is like the who's who of the community. This is amazing. What do we have? Oh, so next up, we're going to be talking a little bit more about this actual event. I really think you guys should maybe just tune in for a second about this. We're going to give you some really important info. So yeah, if you guys are sort of in the back, you might want to come forward a little bit for this. You may have noticed that we're at this amazing place. There's a pond outside, this amazing building. This building was built in 1915. I believe it's a place of the arts. And one note is that the entrance that you would have come in, that's actually going to be closed at night, and you're going to be using another entrance. And in general, you don't want to make too much noise outside of this event, of the building. So yeah, just try to be a little bit quiet once you leave. That said, during the day, there's going to be a lot of noise because, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there are crazy planes in the air.
Fleet Week. Yeah, I kind of thought the world was ending coming here in Uber today. With all these sonic booms all of a sudden. Not actually wartime, apparently.
Yeah, so Fleet Week, you will be hearing that. Maybe you want to pop outside and check it out. And if you are having trouble concentrating, I know that there will be earplugs available.
To the back, to the left of me, which is probably your right. Well, I guess depending on which side of the tables you're on.
Nice.
Near the bathrooms.
So during the next, is it 48 hours? 36 hours? Whatever, next 2 days or so, there's going to be a ton of activities, meetups, workshops, and tech talks. There's lounges, there's some chess boards up there, there's unlimited food, and there's also a ton of people that you should totally be talking to and meeting.
So let's talk about the rules and the criteria.
And do listen to this because it's kind of important.
So you can have a maximum of 4 team members. You can hack by yourself if you want to. That's what maximum of 4 means, just to be clear. You must be physically here. No team members can be remote or like Skyping or Zooming in. When you talk to judges, when you're presenting, we ask for no PowerPoints. What we want is a demo. We don't want long PowerPoints. We want to see what you build. The point is to
live
build.
demos.
And all code has to be written here. It has to be posted on DevPost, on GitHub. The finalists will be based on technicality, originality, practicality, designality, and the wow factor.
Ality.
Nobody liked that joke. I should just stick to BitConnect jokes, let's be honest.
I'm just All right, so, and just, this is really important for you guys to know this. Judging, so the hackathon, like all of the hacking ends at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday. Every member must have signed up on DevPost, and here's the thing is like, do this before. It takes a little bit of time to actually do this sign up, and so it makes sense for you to actually do this today. Get on that now so that you're not stuck at the very end scrambling to get them in. Once everything's been submitted, you'll be assigned a table, and you have 5 minutes to demo and 2 minutes for questions. So yeah, keep that one in mind.
So if you weren't listening, just in case, or for future reference, this is how you keep up to date. ethsanfrancisco.com/chat/schedule/prizes. And of course, because we live in the age of social media, the hashtag for this event is ETHSanFrancisco.
And not ETHSF. And so just be sure you actually do get that right hashtag.
Okay, so rest of the night.
Wow.
Team building, if you're looking for team members, looking to join a team, 10 p.m., up the mezzanine.
Yeah.
After that, there's an intro to Solidity at 11 p.m. And at midnight, creating your first dApp.
So yeah, if you don't yet have a team, you're looking for one, that first one is what you should be attending. Little bit about this space. This is the main stage. The mezzanine's up on top there. There's a theater all the way at the end of the hall. And there's some classrooms that are behind the mezzanine, sort of on the other side of the mezzanine from here. Oh, I think you went.
And sponsor workshops begin at 11 p.m. Again, ethsanfrancisco.com/prizes.
All right. We're almost done, guys. We're almost done. Stay with us. We want to give a big thank you to the volunteers. And if you guys can just clap a little bit, because a lot of people came together to put this together. Thank you to the volunteers. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to the sponsors again. Keep it coming, please. Come on. Thank you to the speakers, judges, and thanks to you for coming out. You have some time ahead of you to make some amazing things. Please do that.
We're excited to see what you build.
Cool. We'll be checking back in with you tomorrow, I think.
So.